Hazbin Hotel made an interesting and honestly pretty brave choice with Alastor in its second season. They decided to make him do something. It was a choice that brought the character so much scrutiny. But despite that, I can't help but look at it as a good choice. Kind of. In isolation. This is the thing about discussing stories. Different elements of the plot affect other elements, so even when I'm praising something, I have to consider how it affects something I criticize. For instance, I think Alastor's role as the guy who gets under Vox's skin undermines Charlie's role as the protagonist. I once got a comment from someone asking why Alastor feels like the main character over Charlie, and the answer seemed pretty obvious to me. If you don't think Vox is the main character, he's the main villain, and Alastor, as his main opposition, kind of becomes the hero by proxy. You see, Charlie and Vox are actually parallels in regard to their need for external validation and how Charlie is able to get over that while Vox continually fails because he's obsessed with getting the validation from Alastor because, I don't know, he thinks he's hot. Honestly, Vox's obsession with Alastor kind of feels a bit contrived in that we don't know how it happened, but it's also extremely plot important and it feels completely out of place considering we know his backstory when he was alive and how he acts now. I mean, it's not like it's impossible to consider it to be a scenario that can happen, it's just feels like we're missing information. Okay, going back to Charlie. The problem is that while this parallel exists, because Charlie fails to stop Vox, it doesn't really matter in regard to the relationship. Sure, it teaches a moral if you notice it, but a story is much more than just its themes. On the flip side, Alastor is not only the character Vox actually cares about, to the point of being willing to completely ignore Charlie to get his hands on him, he's also the one who successfully undermines Vox and kinda defeats him, both by beating him in a fight and planting the seeds that led to the V's taking him down. Kind of. The scene where that's supposed to be a payoff feels a lot more focused on the fact that Vox is about to kill everyone than the fact that he's been a bad teammate. This is me praising the show, by the way, in case it wasn't clear. In light of everything, looking at the show with a focus on Vox's existence, Alastor does come across as the true hero of the story. A crazy position to give this evil cannibal, but this show is about people who are in hell. But Alastor's role in this season did surprise me, and I think the ultimate surprise is that he had one. Taking a step back, let's look at the radio demon as he was presented to us. Alastor was a mysterious mortal soul that had become extremely powerful extremely quickly, throwing Hell's hierarchy into chaos and giving him a terrifying aura. And I suppose aura is the right word, because the internet loves this guy. He's a mysterious bad boy who is the only character in the pilot introduced for everyone to look at and think, cool. I may not interact with the behind the scenes content and extra materials regarding this show, but I'm like 95% sure I watched the pilot within a week of its release, so I've been here to see how much he's basically the mascot of this show. He was the Tumblr sexy man. He was the bad boy in the light of Charlie's overwhelming positiveness. He was the most irredeemable character in the show about redemption whose crime wasn't sexual assault, so the audience would actually consider the possibility of him becoming a better person. In short, he was perfect. But we also didn't really know anything about him. Of course, that only added to the mystique. Who was he? How is he so strong? Was he really just here to watch Charlie fail? Oh my god, is he one of Vizipop's haters? Season 1 only added to the mystique, because we learned that he is evidently on someone else's leash. The big bad radio demon wasn't quite as above it all as he'd like to portray himself as. And his song at the end of the season promised that he was going to find a way out of his predicament. But Season 1 also revealed a lot more about Alastor in regard to who he really is. On top of the fact that he was not as free as he would like to pretend he was, it showed the true level of his insecurity. Lucifer dismissed him once and he basically made it his mission to annoy the guy forever. He gets notably frazzled when he feels like no one cares about him. His ego is massive. And so we come to Season 2, and the writers chose to do something I think was really brave. They unraveled the mystery. It may not seem like much, but going by how shows tend to treat mysterious things and the fact that I've seen more than one person genuinely get inspired by J.J. Abrams and his mystery boxes, episode 12 was not where I would have expected they'd begin giving us the reveal of their most mysterious character, even if the show will ultimately only have 40 episodes. I really did think he'd do the same thing he did last season, which is nothing. Okay, I'm being unfair. He does do stuff. He inadvertently helps Charlie get her dad on her side, and he helps them figure out how to kill angels and get the cannibal army for the season 1 finale. Okay, it doesn't help that my examples are things I think are a result of bad writing. But in terms of being the big scary overlord, he does so little to really pay off his presence. But, the point is that he's not here to really do anything, just to be scary and watch everyone fail. So then, when season 2 starts off and his reaction to Vox visiting the hotel was disappearing off screen, it did feel like we were just going to get into another season of that. And then episode 4 happened and he quit. Yeah, Alastor was getting tired of not accomplishing anything and set out to change that. And with this, the writers began to pull back on the mystery. Why is he so powerful? He made a deal while he was alive in order to get that power. His relationship with Rosie? She's the person he made the deal with. She owns his soul. By the way, I'm just gonna say it, Rosie has to be something notable to have pulled that off. It would be such bullshit if she really was just some overlord. Why did he disappear for 7 years? What is his interest in Charlie's hotel? Rosie's making him do everything to further her goals. All of a sudden, we got a peek behind Alastor's curtain, and what we saw was a dipshit obsessed with his own power and status trying to worm his way out of a deal that was no longer in his favor the way he thought it would be. And then Agenda Hotel happened. And as an anime fan, I've come to love the sheer comedy you can get out of agenda posting. And I love when it slips out into non-anime because that gets real fun. And Agenda Hotel was the result of many things. Lucifer's evident inability to do anything to sinners was one. Charlie's apparent weakness and inability to do anything despite her status was another. I cannot believe she just stood there and watched Angel Dust and Husk nearly die. But so was the realization that Alastor is kind of pathetic. In fact, I think that was the very first thing that really sparked Agenda Hotel. Now, he was a serial killer, so being pathetic is actually some of the best realism the show's given us. But between him begging for his staff to be fixed, thinking he could 1v1 Adam and getting spanked, and then submitting to Vox, it was just prime material. People looked back on season 1 and realized that he was kind of all talk. Was it obvious he had a plan? Yes. So obvious that it kind of feels like bad writing that Vox didn't see it coming. But I guess that was the cost of everyone else letting him win so much. Yeah, I like Vox, but I'm not gonna pretend his enemies didn't make things easy for him. And you want to know the crazy thing? I loved it. Outside of the feeling Vox and Charlie were being negatively affected as characters by Alastor getting so much sauce, I absolutely loved it. Because it gave Alastor something to be centered around. His ego and desire for control were contextualized and we got to see him struggle and think his way out of problems. We got to learn about his motivations and see him act towards them while trying to maneuver around his opponents. And you know what? What I said about Vox goes for Rosie. Did she not notice that Alastor was clearly up to something, or does she just not have a TV to have seen Vox's whole celebration? I have a real problem with this show in that I start to like the characters less the more I think about how smart they probably are. My point is that giving Alastor this role allowed him to be a part of the plot, making use of his motivations and limitations to explain why he was approaching the problem the way he was. It's like what they did with Lucifer, but I'm not as frustrated about it and Alastor actually does something. Also, I'm not gonna lie, Vox's victory tour makes me laugh every time. He literally put Alastor in the cuck chair. I saw people going, poor Alastor, like he's not a horrible person who deserves every second of pain he's put through in this show and even far more. But Unlike the other frauds of the show, Alastor was able to redeem himself when his plan came to fruition, and Vox took on the position of strongest sinner in hell. Which honestly still raises questions for me. I've seen all the explanations people make for how this works, and the vast disparity in them tells me the show did not do a good job portraying exactly how that works. I do have to ask, and this is less of a criticism and just more me wondering about the mechanics of this show. How do deals work? It seems Rosie just gave Alastor a set amount of power, because otherwise I'd have assumed his power would just increase to put him above Vox when Vox became stronger, instead of just having the deal get broken. Plus, Alastor was still powerful, which... how do overlords get powerful? If it's just deals and contracts, wouldn't having Alastor as his prisoner have made Vox stronger? But regardless of all those questions, he still whooped the strongest sinner in hell despite being nerfed. Skill issue. Honestly, a great redemption for all the fraud accusations that are still very funny. In fact, Alastor is really the only character who managed to recoup some of his lost aura. I suppose this leads into my final point. Despite all the reveals, there's still enough mystery and intrigue to carry Alastor. He seems to have switched gears from pretending to just want to watch Charlie to wanting to abuse Lucifer and probably use him in whatever he's planning next. There's been talk about him being next season's main villain, which... sorry, Loot. You're so ignored that the YouTube algorithm refused to recommend the video I made about you. Plus, there's now all sorts of things he knows that no one else does. Like what Rosie wants. The show was able to reveal a lot of the mystery of Alastor in a way that was honestly an improvement to his character while making him even more unpredictable. And I think that's commendable. Even though, yes, this video has just been peppered with me stating my criticisms. But yes, the big twist of this video is, it is mostly positive. Who'd have thought? Shout out to my patrons and channel members, A, Skyman, and Jarg Evolved. Tell me your thoughts down below, and while you're at it, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe for more hype if you're on mobile, and check out the loot video. Thank you, and good day.